Hey everyone. Today we're diving into one of Marvel's most conflicted characters, Thunderbolt Ross. Born into a family with a long military tradition, Ross's journey is as explosive as his nickname. Get ready, because his story is packed with triumphs, heartaches, and battles that blur the line between duty and obsession. And later in the video, I'll also break down how Marvel Snap translates his abilities from the comics into gameplay. Now, let's jump in. Ross was born into a legacy of service. His father and grandfather had both fought in wars for the US. As a boy, he immersed himself in military history. As a young man, Ross enlisted in the military, graduating first in his class at West Point. He married Karen Lee, the daughter of his commanding officer, a union that seemed destined for greatness. But there was always a twist. Despite his rising career, he soon earned the rank of major during his first war, and even got his nickname when his troops said he struck like a thunderbolt. Life wasn't all victory. Karen died when their daughter Betty was still in her early teens. Therefore, even from the start, Ross's personal life was steeped in both honor and tragedy. After the war, Ross was stationed at Los Alamos, New Mexico, a nuclear research facility that promised groundbreaking discoveries. There, he encountered nuclear physicist Brian Banner, but soon he was committed to a mental institution for murdering his own wife. Ross saw potential instead in Brian's brilliant son, Bruce, and even offered military support for Bruce's education as a future weapons developer. Ross rose to the rank of colonel before his next war, during which he became a general in the U.S. Air Force. He eventually commanded Los Alamos Missile Base, nicknamed Desert Base, where Bruce Banner supervised the development of the Gamma Bomb. Ross scorned Banner's meek personality and was dismayed when he noticed the growing attraction between Banner and his daughter Betty, whom he hoped would marry a military officer. But when a secret Gamma Bomb test transformed Bruce into the monstrous Hulk, Ross immediately considered the Hulk a menace. Therefore, his long career of hunting the creature was set in motion. Banner's frequent unexplained absences aroused Ross's suspicion. Determined, he recruited Major Glenn Talbot as his security chief. As the head of Operation Hulk, Ross pursued the Hulk even after Bruce Banner's dual identity became public knowledge, making Banner a hunted runaway. He did manage to capture the Hulk on occasion, but every victory was short-lived. Ross's failures only fueled his determination to end the Hulk menace once and for all. But his challenges didn't stop there. Ross soon found himself in conflict with other superhuman foes, most notably the Leader and the Abomination. The Hulk invariably defeated these menaces, forcing Ross to regard him with a grudging respect, even as his obsession deepened. When Banner eventually gained control of the Hulk, Ross reluctantly approved of Banner's marriage to Betty. He even offered his own house for the wedding. However, during the ceremony, the Leader used his technology to revert the Hulk to a savage state. Ross was injured in the ensuing battle between the Hulk and the Leader's pawn, the Rhino. Therefore, every moment of progress was quickly met with renewed conflict. The government then commissioned Operation Greenskin, operating out of Hulkbuster Base, and Ross was given command of this new initiative. Their primary directive was twofold: capture and cure the Hulk, and study the effects of radiation on the human body to drive medical breakthroughs. Ross's plan seemed promising when Betty married Glenn Talbot, while the Hulk was briefly thought dead. Ross and the Hulkbusters then pursued the elusive Hulk all the way into the Arctic Circle. But here, Ross was captured by the Gremlin. Yet even in the face of capture, hope arrived. Glenn Talbot and Air Force Colonel Jack Armbruster combined forces to rescue him. However, in a cruel twist, Talbot was captured instead and presumed dead. Ross was then burdened with the tragic responsibility of informing his daughter of her husband's apparent death. Due to his capture, Ross was relieved of command of Project Greenskin and replaced by Armbruster. Nevertheless, he continued to accompany Armbruster on subsequent Hulkbusters missions. But after Armbruster was killed by an agent impersonating Glenn Talbot, Ross and Clay Quartermain led a daring team to rescue the real Talbot, only to find that Talbot became catatonic during their escape. Seeking help from Bruce Banner to cure Talbot, Ross again coerced the Abomination into capturing the Hulk. The Abomination's efforts failed, but a later attack by Doc Samson and S.H.I.E.L.D. succeeded, and with Banner's help, Talbot was finally cured. After these chaotic events, Ross rededicated his command post as Gamma Base, focusing even more on Gamma research. But when the leader seized control of Gamma Base, Ross was injured in the ensuing struggle, though the Hulk swiftly defeated the villain. Yet Ross's personal battle was far from over. The relentless pressures eventually pushed him into a nervous breakdown, triggered by the criminal psychiatrist Moonstone, Carla Sofin. Therefore, Doc Samson was appointed temporary commander of Gamma Base, and Ross was forced to spend a length of time under Samson's care. During Ross's recovery, more changes rocked his world. Betty and Glenn Talbot divorced, and Talbot was appointed commander of Gamma Base after Samson's resignation. Funding for Gamma Base was canceled, and later, Glenn Talbot died battling the Hulk. Ross, consumed by grief and guilt, soon returned to active duty, bent on avenging Talbot's death. He couldn't regain funding for the Hulkbusters, but the Pentagon appointed him as a special advisor on matters relating to the Hulk. However, Bruce Banner regained control of his Hulk form and even received a presidential pardon for his past offenses. Therefore, Ross's mission became even more complicated. Still convinced the Hulk was a menace, Ross formed an alliance with MODOK and allowed him to abduct the Abomination from captivity to use against the Hulk. But this effort failed spectacularly, and when Betty learned of her father's actions, she accused him of betrayal. Overwhelmed by shame, Ross even contemplated suicide and was eventually dishonorably discharged from the military. Therefore, he became a drifter, sinking further into insanity. In his further descent, when Ross learned that Betty planned to marry Banner after being separated from the Hulk, he tried to stop the wedding at gunpoint. In a dramatic moment, Ross shot Rick Jones when he tried to intervene. But Betty confronted her father, persuading him to let the wedding proceed. As a result, Ross was placed under psychiatric care. In another reckless move, Quartermain recruited the still unstable Ross for an experiment meant to grant him the powers of the electrical entity Xax. But the experiment went off track. Xax absorbed Ross's consciousness, which soon dominated their combined form. The creature, now controlled by Ross, attacked Bruce Banner and Rick Jones, but fled after recognizing its own monstrousness. Ross's mind eventually returned to his body, which retained residual electrical powers. Then, in what seemed like a final act of sacrifice, Ross saved Betty from the mutant Nevermind who had terrorized Gamma Base. He killed Nevermind with a burst of electricity, but received mortal wounds in the process. In his final moments, Ross realized his obsession with the Hulk had been misguided, and he apologized before expiring in his daughter's arms. But death wasn't the final chapter for Ross. The leader stole Ross's body and used his technology to restore it to a semblance of life, though as a nearly mindless servant. The Trojans later recovered Ross's dying body and restored him to health, but they wiped his recent memories and sent him back into society, constantly monitored as they expected him to lead them to the Hulk. After reuniting with his daughter, Ross was restored to his former position as an Air Force general and even began to embrace nonviolent methods to deal with the Hulk, seeking peaceful coexistence instead of confrontation. But tragedy continued to haunt him. When Betty seemingly died from radiation poisoning, Ross blamed Banner and renewed his conflict with the Hulk. He established a new incarnation of the Hulkbusters, operating out of Area 102, known as Hulkbuster Base, and even preserved Betty's body in hopes of someday reviving her. Finally, Ross was placed in charge of a new Gamma base in Death Valley, Nevada, where Banner was held captive. Ross, alongside Doc Samson, apparently even played a role in the creation of the Red Hulk, intending to send him after Banner when he inevitably escaped. In the comics, Thunderbolt Ross is a man driven by duty, strategy, and an unyielding obsession with stopping the Hulk. He's relentless, constantly scanning for weaknesses in his adversaries and exploiting every mistake. That's exactly the kind of tactical mindset he brings to the battlefield. Now, his snap card reads, when your opponent ends a turn with unspent energy, draw a card with 10 or more power. This ability is like a nod to his military cunning. When an opponent leaves energy unused, when they hesitate or mismanage their resources, Ross punishes by drawing a powerful card. His strength isn't raw power. It's the opportunity to gather more resources and strike when the enemy is off guard. In other words, his card captures that aspect of his character. Always on the lookout for the slightest misstep. Always ready to turn an opponent's inefficiency into an advantage. Ross's card doesn't directly boost his power. It draws a new, high-power card when an opponent leaves energy unspent. This reflects his strategic, opportunistic nature, always using an enemy's moment of weakness to his advantage. In contrast, Red Hulk gets an immediate power boost, mirroring his more explosive and forceful approach. Ross is the tactician, while Red Hulk is the bruiser. So I think his card is a good representation of his comic book persona, always on the prowl for an opening, waiting to capitalize on every unspent bit of energy his enemy leaves behind. Thank you for taking this epic journey with me. Who do you want me to cover next? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, stay curious. And remember, in the midst of chaos, our battles shape who we become.